Yes, I'm set.
Yes, you are. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Arizona Interfaith Community Faith Forums, and also Happy New Year. Well, it seems a little late to be saying that now, but this is the first time that we've met since the beginning of this new year. So I'm Mitzi Linton. I am the Vice President of the Arizona Interfaith Movement, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this Faith Forum today. Glad that you are here. Our Faith Forum this afternoon is interfaith marriage. But how do we raise the kids? The complexities of interfaith marriage. These forums are set up as an opportunity to learn from different faith perspectives, differing views, and to really incorporate and learn and just understand greater our brothers and our sisters from different faith groups. So we're again very happy that you are here. The forum proceeds like this. We have today 5 well-esteemed and respected panelists, and after they've had an opportunity to share from their faith perspective on interfaith marriage, and that will be, each panelist will have about 8 minutes. There'll be a time after that for questions and answers. And then we'll leave some time for Paul, because Paul loves to have time at the end to sell the things that are coming up next. So we give very many thanks for one of our audience members for presenting this idea to us. So if you have ideas for future faith forums, let us know. We have the next few months set up, but we're always interested to hear what you would like to hear. So I'm going to introduce each of our panelists before they speak, because sometimes when we introduce everyone all at once, we forget who they are, right? So we drew numbers in a democratic fashion, and our first brave speaker is the very lovely Courtney Lonergan. She is a Muslim, and she has given me a little bio right here. This one, right? Yes. Courtney is a cultural anthropologist, and she focuses on difference, power, and discrimination in the U.S. Applied field work within mixed identities in the United States, and violence within marginalized groups. Gangs in Phoenix and LA. She has really applied her field work in that arena. I know you're going to tell us a little bit more about that. For the last 15 years. She's adjunct faculty with ASU and a lead associate with Partners in Participation. So please help me welcome Courtney.
Okay, so to just jump right into it. Oh, I also work with the American Islamic Forum for Democracy with Zuhdi Jasser, and I facilitate a Muslim Liberty Project, which is young Muslims across the U.S., and then the American Islamic Leadership Coalition, which is Muslim leaders across the world who are coming together to combat religious extremism. So to get into it, Muslim as a word means a person who submits their will to God, and Islam means peace. And so the Quran is the only miracle of Prophet Muhammad, and as Muslims, we believe that it's a guide for all humanity, and that it's more of a way of life than an organized religion. What really attracted me to it was social justice, and that there isn't a hierarchy. I was raised Catholic, and it's interesting as a cultural anthropologist as you see how Islam has shifted as a practice in political realms where there is a hierarchy, but the basic religion, there isn't priests or leaders. It's a person's individual journey. So with that, marriage, as outlined in the Quran, is a contract between a man and a woman, and there actually doesn't need to be a third party there. I thought it was interesting when I got married. the imam was like, well, do you want to get married? Do you want to get married? Okay, you guys are married. I was like, oh, that's really all it is. So, and you write like a written contract to each other of what you promise to each other in front of God. And there's other people there as witnesses. Another key piece of Islam is that there's no compulsion in religion, that it should be in a person's heart and their beliefs. So I have 3 small children, and I wore a headscarf for 7 years, and people would ask me, oh, when are you going to make your daughter wear her headscarf? And I'm like, never. She chooses to be what faith she chooses. I'm sharing my faith with her, but whatever faith they choose is in their own hearts. Let's see what else. Muslims believe in in a bunch of different holy books. Muslims believe that Adam is a prophet, Abraham, Moses, and in the Quran it says there's over 125,000 other prophets that were never written down. And I think maybe quite a few of those were women. And a key piece of Islam is that it's not one person's role to judge another person, that there's many paths that human beings can take. And so, like currently raising my kids, and I focused in the United States on mixed identities. And I feel like, and I've particularly mixed ethnic identities, which could be so many different, it could be racial, it could be religion, it could be just simply their parents identify differently, and then how that young person defines their identity out of that growth. And I would say as parents raising children, that it's very important to be open and to allow them to choose what path they want to take. The first word that Angel Gabriel said to Prophet Muhammad was read. And he was like, what? And Angel Gabriel said, read again. So I know a lot of American Muslims in this country really encourage their children to read about all different faiths. And that's what I encourage my children to do. And right, we have some good friends. They were at Experience Interfaith, and they're raising their children Catholic and Hindu, and we're really good friends with them. And so all the kids are like, well, we're going to be Catholic and Hindu and Muslim. So I feel like they'll find a new way to define how they identify and how they practice their faith. So, and when the kids were little, because we did have quite a few friends that were a little bit more extreme and would only hang out with other Muslims, they would ask me, they're like, who's a Muslim? And I would tell them that everyone's a Muslim, that everyone in some way submits their will to God. And that was a way for them to just identify with everyone. But I think that's all I had.
Anything else about how you raise your children, or in the interfaith marriage itself?
Well, okay, so I spoke with one of 2 imams this morning to get their feedback on pieces, and I thought it was interesting how they explained to me that for men, it's fine for men to marry women of different faiths in Islam, traditionally, but that for women, that was not encouraged. And then they were like, well, it's kind of hard to tell you that, Courtney. And so I realized, too, that, Sharia law, which is a key piece of Muslims, and the Muslim leaders that they're helping to redefine, wasn't really written down until 300 years after the Prophet. Now, 100 years, you can have 5 generations. So that's 15 generations of communication, particularly from a culture that was, before the Prophet, in certain communities, they used to bury their female babies alive, and women were really seen as property. And this is still a piece that many Muslim cultures are still struggling against, is men and women's rights. It's really based in the culture and not the religion. But as we see, people that are in power oftentimes will use religion or faith tenets to control others. When I used to wear the headscarf for 7 years, I had a couple from Saudi Arabia that was going to school here, and they lived in my house for a while, and we'd sit there and we'd talk about it. I was like, okay, so help me understand, because I thought hijab meant to dress modestly, and they're like, it does. And I was like, okay, well, where does it say in the Quran to wear a headscarf? Because headscarf is khimar, and it actually says in the Quran to take off your headscarf and cover your bosoms, because women used to flash men before they'd go off to war. And so, there's a lot of different pieces that, as books get translated to different languages, they're always translated through not only the culture, but then also the person's individual perspectives of life. And so some of the leaders I'm working with now, I have several, I work with some of the leaders that used to be Nation of Islam. The largest conversion is Sunni Muslims here in the United States. And I have some Qurans that they've translated that are very beautiful. So that's just another piece to look into if you're interested.
Thank you. Thank you, Courtney. Thanks again, Courtney. And our next speaker, you can pass that mic right down. This will be from our Rabbi Arthur Lavinsky. And I have Anne's phone here. Uh-oh.
One of the smallest letters you can read.
Right. We're going to, there we go, modern technology. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Rabbi Arthur Lavinsky, the spiritual leader of Beth El Congregation in Phoenix. He came to us I'm reading it from the bio from Beth El Congregation. He came to us by the way of Akron, Ohio, where he served his synagogue with distinction for 8 years. He also served congregations in Philadelphia, Burlington, Vermont, and Tampa, Florida. Rabbi Lavinsky was raised in New York and is a graduate of Columbia University, where he majored in psychology and the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. He also pursued a degree in the Talmud and was ordained as a rabbi in 1981. He studied for 2 years at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and spent his first years of rabbinical school at the University of Judaism in LA. From his earliest years, Rabbi Lavinsky has exhibited his leadership skills as a United Synagogue Youth Chapter President, Regional Officer, I'm scrolling around, Regional Officer and President of the Student Body of JTS.
Jewish Theological Center.
Okay. Both as an undergraduate and as a rabbinical student. Additionally, he served 2 terms as the president of the Akron Area Interfaith Council and 2 terms as president of the Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, and Kentucky region of the Rabbinical Assembly, and is the immediate past president of the Board of Rabbis of Greater Phoenix. And there's a lot more.
So just skip it.
Yes, so let's let you be welcomed, and you share whatever you'd like to share from now on.
Thank you very much. Since I was allotted 8 minutes, I have to say in conclusion, and I really need to update some of those things and tighten it up, but thank you very much for the gracious introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today. Now, do we have some Christians here today? Okay, is it true that when you that when a Catholic has a child with a Jew, that the child will be a Protestant? Obviously, that's a joke. But the truth is that we're here talking about intermarriage today and how to raise children. And what are your children when you are the product of intermarried families? In contrast to what Courtney shared with us a few moments ago, where Muslim leaders are not troubled when a male Muslim marries a female, that's probably because it is understood that there's a patrilineal leadership, that it goes through the father's religion, and that the father will determine the religion. With us, we have matrilineality, that traditional Jews, all right, there are some non-traditional movements that think otherwise, but that traditional Jews generally follow that it is through the mother's lineage that the child is Jewish or not Jewish. Now, I do also want to point out that I want to create a distinction between a intermarriage, which in our faith, where a Jew marries a non-Jew, and a conversionary marriage, where somebody converts to Judaism to marry a Jew. That would be considered endogamous, a Jew to a fellow Jew, because anybody who converts to Judaism is as Jewish as anybody else who's Jewish. So that's something to think about. There are a few other things I'd like to point out, and I'm going to recommend that you not watch a movie. A particular movie, it was called The Hebrew Hammer. Please don't watch it. It'll suck the IQ right out of you. And it shows this parody of a little Jewish boy who goes to a school, public school, and it's Christmas time, and they have all these presents that all the Christian kids are getting. One kid gets a pony, and you see it in the classroom. Another one gets this magnificent, all the PlayStations, all the different types of gaming systems. Another person gets a bunch of puppies, all these magnificent things. And then, when it comes to this kid, it's Hanukkah, what did you get? And he pulls out a little dreidel, a plastic top, which pales in comparison. So when we talk about, raising children who are born of interfaith families, at least in America, the predominant culture here is Christian. We talk Judeo-Christian, usually with a smattering of others. But our politicians, our Western civilization often refers to us as a Judeo-Christian tradition. Even though we're first, we're a very small minority in the United States, and a diminishing minority at that. So when we confront intermarriage, we understand that our odds are not very good. Hanukkah doesn't compare to Christmas. Hanukkah doesn't compare to the Super Bowl. And truly, that's something that we need to be, that we have to keep in mind. So for us, we believe that we're supposed to be an Or LaGoyim, a light unto the nations. We have a message to the world to make it a better place. And I think most religions feel that way too, that they have something to share to make them unique. So as such, we are very mindful that as our numbers diminish, we've been referred to as the ever-dying people. And people have helped us along in that process over the years. So, oh my God, this is being taped. It's going to go viral. Rabbi talks. This is very bad. Non-Orthodox Jews, and Orthodox are a minority, average 1.6 children. What does that tell you? We're not replacing ourselves. And the intermarriage rate among non-Orthodox hovers between 60 and 70%. So the numbers are ever shrinking. And I'll bet you, if you're a Christian or a Muslim, I can't speak to the other faiths that are represented here. You're not asking yourself the question, in 2 generations, will there be Muslims or Christians? There are so many hundreds of millions of you. With us, we might have 15 million, and that's being very generous worldwide, because there are many people who call themselves Jews who don't fit into that traditional view of having come from a Jewish mother or converting to Judaism. It's the guy down the block who says, oh, I'm going to start going to synagogue, I call myself a Jew too. But when it comes to people who really fall into the fold, we are a group that is diminishing in size. So, as a conservative rabbi, interestingly, there's a very strong position that our movement has taken. One which, by the way, has caused me personal pain, because there are people I know and love whose weddings I've been invited to who are intermarried. As a conservative rabbi, remember, we're not Orthodox, we're in the middle. It's a gross, generalization, but that's how most people understand us. We're the Episcopalians of the Jewish faith. We're not Catholic, we're liturgical, we're liberal and other things, but I as a conservative rabbi am not allowed not only to officiate at a wedding, an interfaith wedding, I'm not even allowed to be present. Because my presence would be seen as an imprimatur, as a stamp of approval. And I think that over the years, that's going to be something that is going to be liberalized because it's caused rifts in families. I have family members whose weddings I could not go to, who, and I don't blame them, will not talk to me. And that's caused me great pain. So there are times that, if you abide by a certain standard within your movement, there's a price to pay for that. I am very mindful, however, that there are wonderful intermarried couples, including in my own congregation, where the non-Jewish spouse is extremely supportive, whether it's the mother or the father, bringing the child to religious school, making sure the child is instructed, making sure they get to synagogue the requisite number of times, particularly in preparation for bar or bat mitzvah, which is a major rite of passage for our children, and I'm extremely grateful to them to that. If, however, let's say, and the very common cases where the man is Jewish and the woman is not, that child, if they wish to be counted in the Jewish people and be part of my synagogue, which is a traditional congregation, that child needs to be converted. And in the case of a boy, the child needs to be circumcised and also immersed in what we call a mikvah, which is a ritual bath. If you want to see what one looks like, go to the Mormon temple before it opens up. It's great. I was there last week. You see something very similar to that mikvah. And girls just have to be immersed and then raised Jewishly. So essentially we have, we make sure we want to welcome people, but we also understand that unless somebody is doing this exclusively, that there's a very slim chance that they are going to maintain the faith. Also, just in contrast to something you said you want your children to be exposed to all different things, and as long as they pick a religion, that's fine with you. I'm a company guy. I really feel that I'm raising my child to be a Jew, my two children. I would feel very betrayed if they chose another faith, because I've tried to model for them and teach them, so it's very important to me. I would also point out that just one point that I'm not going to try to speak for other groups, but just one last point. In the Reform movement, they have a position of patrilineality and matrilineality, meaning that if either parent is Jewish, that child can be Jewish if they have been raised exclusively Jewishly. But in practice, what's happened is that they've basically said, if either parent is Jewish, that's fine. So that I even had one child who was going to services on Saturday with us and going to church on Sunday. It doesn't cut it. When you're part of my faith and my religion, we want that type of a loyalty, because we feel that it would be too confusing to children. So thank you very much, and be well.
Thank you so much. Our next panelist is Ron Waldron. He is the stake president for Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And Ron serves as the president of the Phoenix, Arizona West Maricopa State of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and has served in that position since 2005. As stake president, he oversees 9 congregations representing approximately 4,000 members of the church. The church operates with a lay clergy, so Ron makes his living as an insurance agent for various types of health insurance. Raised in Southern California, he has made his home in Arizona since 1983. Ron and his wife Linda have been married for 43 years. They have 3 children and 10 grandchildren. So please help me welcome Ron Waldron.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you today. Probably the first thing to do is explain the name of our church, since it's used in so many different ways. It is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Also, many people call us the Mormons because of our belief in the Book of Mormon as additional scripture, and that's fine. Some people call us the LDS Church, because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is extremely long. And when I introduce myself as the stake president of the Phoenix, Arizona, West Maricopa stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it doesn't fit on a business card too well. Our church in the last few years has received a lot of media attention because of a lot of things going on. I guess it all started with the Olympics in Salt Lake City and moved on to presidential campaigns and American Idol and Jeopardy and everything else you can think of. But let me explain a little bit about marriage in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our doctrine is that marriage, that the family relationship is eternal. And as you probably have heard in the media, we have a new temple opening up in Gilbert. There's an open house going on right now. Once the temple is dedicated in March, it will only be open to members in good standing. However, we have another temple that is going up in Phoenix, in the northwest part of Phoenix, which we anticipate will be done sometime the end of this year, beginning of next year, and there will be another open house for another 6 or 8 weeks. But the reason we build these temples, when my wife and I were first married, we converted to the church about 4 or 5 months after we were married. And at that time, there were a total of about 17 temples in the entire world. And now we have, between the temples that have been actually are dedicated and in use, and temples that are in construction or announced, we have over 160 temples. So there's been a great expansion. Temples are not the same as our congregations that meet every Sunday. Temples are used for other ceremonies, and particularly regarding the family. In the temple, when a man and woman are married, or in the case of my wife and I, we were already married, so when we went to the temple after we were baptized in the church, we went through the same ceremony as a couple getting married, and the words are not until death do you part, which in essence says when you die you are no longer married. In the temple, we believe that families are joined or combined or sealed, is what we call it, sealed together for eternity. And so our family relationships, my wife and I as husband and wife, will continue in the eternities if we have been through the temple ceremonies. And our children, that relationship remains the same. They will continue to be our children. So in the LDS Church, when we talk about interfaith marriage, it becomes of particular concern, because then this eternal nature of the family will not continue if someone marries outside of their religion. But of course that happens on a regular basis. My experience has been that when I have couples in my congregation that have married, have an interfaith marriage, generally it's because one person is very enthusiastic about their religion, and many times the other person is not. And so therefore they marry outside of their religion. And so one person is kind of indifferent. But that doesn't always remain that way. I had, when I was serving as a bishop, I had a young lady that when she graduated from high school, she married a young man who was not a member of our church. And then as the years went by, they had 3 or 4 children, and the young woman now attended church regularly. She brought her children with her. Her husband had no interest in really any religion. And it caused conflicts in their marriage because she was overbearing. She wanted her husband to be there sitting next to her in church. She wanted her husband to take her to the temple so that her children would be with her through the eternities. She wanted all these things that she had been raised with, but that she, for a moment of time, had turned her back on. And she had a wonderful husband. He was a good man. I met with him occasionally. And one time he came to me and he said, he said, you know, I really want my wife and children to be happy. Perhaps I should just leave and let her marry somebody in the church. Who was at fault here? It was her. She was causing undue pressure on the marriage. And so I talked with her about this, that she was married to a good man. She just needed to have faith in God, and to be the kind of wife that she should be and the kind of mother. And so she did that. Well, years went by, 2 or 3 years, and her husband became interested in the church. He was baptized. He took his wife to the temple because she exercised faith. So great things can happen if we live by the principle that this very organization expounds, and that is live by the golden rule. We need to treat one another as our religion teaches us to treat them, regardless of their individual beliefs, and then wait for good things to happen. I want to share with you a statement regarding especially children. In 1995, our church issued a proclamation called The Family. And in this proclamation, it talks about what the family is. The family has obviously become under attack. And so I just want to read you a couple of the excerpts that relate particularly to children. But what I want you to listen for in this is that it does not mention any particular religion. It mentions how we should raise our children and the obligation that we believe that parents have. So I'll just read the first paragraph and read a couple of things about the children. We, the first presidency of and the council of the 12 apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, solemnly proclaim that marriage between a man and woman is ordained of God, and that the family is central to the Creator's plan for the eternal destiny of his children. And then regarding children, husbands and wives have a solemn responsibility to love and care for each other and for their children. Children are an heritage of the Lord, from Psalms. Parents have a sacred duty to rear their children in love and righteousness, to provide for their physical and spiritual needs, to teach them to love and serve one another, to observe the commandments of God, and to be law-abiding citizens wherever they live. Husbands and wives, mothers and fathers will be held accountable before God for the discharge of these obligations. The family is ordained of God. Marriage between man and woman is essential to his eternal plan. Children are entitled to birth within the bonds of matrimony and to be reared by a father and a mother who honor marital vows with complete fidelity. Happiness in family life is most likely to be achieved when founded upon the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ. And there we could substitute just God in general. Successful marriages and families are established and maintained on principles of faith, prayer, repentance, forgiveness, respect, love, compassion, work, and wholesome recreational activities. It concludes with, we warn that individuals who violate covenants of chastity, who abuse spouse or offspring, or who fail to fulfill family responsibilities will one day stand accountable before God.
30 seconds.
And so my feelings about interfaith marriages and raising children is that we need to live our religion. We need to teach them, but most importantly, we need to show love and respect for all and for their beliefs. Thank you.
This one does it talk? Thank you so much, Ron. I especially really enjoyed hearing that story about the lady that you shared and your word of how she was overbearing. And how that came around. That was not what I expected to hear, and I loved hearing. I loved being surprised. So thank you so much for that. Our next speaker is Dr. Jaswant Singh Sachdev. He is a Sikh and is a board-certified fellow of the American Academy of Neurology. Prior to immigrating to the U.S. in 1972, he completed his postgraduate studies in medicine and taught at the Government Medical College in India, where he was the recipient of several gold medals, including an award for the best graduate of the MBBS class of 1967. As a community volunteer, he leads members of the Sikh community in preparing and serving free dinner to homeless citizens on a monthly basis. In 2004, the Arizona Asian American Association recognized him with Outstanding Citizen Award for his various service activities, including his work for Sikh awareness. Dr. Sachdev is an author with an interest in Indian diaspora matters, and his first book, Square Pegs, Round Holes, was well received. One Coin, Two Sides is a further collection of essays contrasting cultural similarities and dissimilarities of non-resident Indians in a dominant Western culture. I love the titles of those books, they're so clever. Anyways, please help me welcome Dr. Sachdev.
First of all, I must thank Dixie and other members of the Arizona Interfaith who have given me this opportunity to talk to you about this very important, complex matter. I really don't have any answers, and I agree with all what has been already stated. Nevertheless, I think there are certain things which should be discussed, because as time passes, you will find people like me looking similar to me, living in different part of the country and the state and the city. So this question obviously arises as to who we are, what we stand for, what our culture is, what our faith is, and how are we raising our children. So in that perspective, I think this is a very important topic. To discuss this topic, I think it might be worthwhile for a couple of minutes to talk about Sikh faith, because without having the background as to where I come from and what I represent, I think it will be difficult for me to explain what I'm going to say. I am a Sikh, and obviously Sikh is visible wherever a Sikh goes if he follows the principles and practices of his faith. This religion actually started about 550 years ago in north part of India, part of which is now in Pakistan. And the first guru or the teacher, he was born in a Hindu family. 85 to 90% of people of India are Hindus. So when he was born in a Hindu family, he started to preach things which were not suitable to the dominant faith at that time. There were two religions at that time in India, Hinduism and the Islam has just taken hold for about 300 or 400 years. So the second dominant religion was, of course, Islamic faith. He would attend ceremonies at both Hindu places and Muslim places and would go there and try to find faults as to this should not be done, what meaning this has, and started giving his own version of as to how a life must be lived. As he went along, he traveled for about 28 years to different parts of the world, and his travelogue included all of the India, north, east, south, west, including the part which is now known as Burma, and then also Tibet, and then he went to northwest side of India to Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and also to Saudi Arabia. Southward he traveled to Sri Lanka. This is what it was called at one time, and I mean at that time it was known as, during British rule it was called Ceylon. So about 28 years of his life he went about and basically went to religious places wherever people would meet and try to explain. For example, while he was in Mecca, he slept with his legs towards the holy place. So somebody questioned that how come you are putting your legs towards the holy place? So he said that put my legs towards the side where there is no God or what is not holy. And obviously it is stated in that story that when the person tried to move his leg, the religious place moved along with him, proving a point that God is everywhere. You don't have to have facing one side or other side to find God. God is within you. He was followed by 9 other teachers, and the 10th master or the 10th prophet or 10th guru, when he was ready to leave the world, he decided that Sikh must have now a scripture which should be their guru rather than a living being. So all the information or all the writings of the previous gurus, which had already been collected and compiled together in the form of a book by the 5th guru of the Sikhs, was then designated as the next guru of the Sikhs. And this religious book is known as Guru Granth Sahib. Many Sikhs will call it as 11th guru. And what it has is writing of the first 5 gurus, then writings of the Hindu saints, about 15 of them, 2 Sufi fakirs from Islamic faith, and then ordinary Sikhs. So there are 40 different writers in this book, which was compiled by the 5th guru of the Sikhs, and which is now known as the guru of the Sikhs, or the 11th or the final guru of the Sikhs, and which is what is kept in Golden Temple, where people go and bow. Copies of it are available in all the Sikh religious places, and that is where Sikh temple is, that is where that book will be. Anyway, so according to that book, a Sikh must live its life, whether it's male or female. Now keep in mind that Sikhs are only 1.8% of the total population of India. And at that time, the people who became Sikh basically came from Hindu faith because they were the majority number of people. And what will happen is that every family will say that our eldest son will be given to Sikh faith. So each family, whosoever believed in those 10 gurus or prophets, will come to their prayers and will offer their oldest son to be converted into Sikh faith. Whereupon the generation then will follow from that. However, it is a concept which is well recognized that wherever a majority faith is, the faith on the other side will tend to follow, or their children will try to follow that faith given an opportunity, because it becomes very difficult for somebody. For example, my children grew in Phoenix, Arizona, because I have been here for almost 39 years. All their life, wherever they were, there were only one person like that, and that was themselves. So every evening when they will come home, they will have a lot of questions as to how come I am different than rest of the people. How come I have not to cut my hair when everybody else does that? So that kind of pressure, whether we talk about it or not, it has to be accepted as a fact that the children of the people who belong to minority group will always be, and I don't want to use the word vulnerable, because if I say word vulnerable, that means that they are going to do something wrong by following the path of a majority faith, but exactly that is what it is. That you are always at a position where you have to work hard to make sure that your child follows the faith you keep. Now, in the same philosophy, I think the interfaith marriages are. No religion in this world will ever tell you, no religion, thank you. No religion will ever tell you that your child should marry another faith. But then we are all human beings. The heart follows, or heart rules your mind when you are at that stage, and the hormones are more important than religion. It's very well known. So in that situation, the interfaith marriages will happen. And more we progress, more and more we send our children to schools and colleges away from us, more and more we have different kinds of people living in an environment, there will be more interfaith marriages. So this fact cannot be avoided, but at the same time, I fully realize this, that no matter what we say, everybody wishes that the child should marry in their own faith, because that is the only way you are going to survive as a distinct religion. In my religion, it is very clearly stated, and the 10th Guru, when he was leaving this world, he did make a statement which was codified in 20th century in what we call the Constitution of the Sikhs, where it is very clearly stated that a Sikh must marry a Sikh. Now, having said that, do I believe that every Sikh is doing that? No, because in India, a lot of Sikhs are marrying Hindu families because that is the majority. And here, I see all around me, Sikhs are intermarrying. And I personally don't see anything wrong in it, but as we all have said, and everybody believes that there are issues, there are problems which they will be facing. If one is able to solve those problems, so be it. But if one cannot, then one has to be a little careful. In Sikh philosophy, and I'm going to finish with that marriage is not considered a contract. It is stated that Tanpir, Sod Akhiyan Jo Bain Ikatte Hue, Ek Jot Doe Murti Sab Marriage Soe. In other words, what it means that marriage is not of two people who just decide to sit together or live together. Marriage is a spiritual union where there is one light and two bodies. And that can only happen if the philosophical thinking of two persons happens to be same. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sachdev. So our final panelist today is Reverend Dr. Kelly Bender. He is a United Methodist and served the United Methodist congregations for 43 years, the last as senior pastor of the Paradise Valley United Methodist Church, where he was named Pastor Emeritus upon his retirement in July 2012. In addition to his seminary degree from St. Paul's School of Theology, he holds an MS in Family and Child Development and PhD in Family Life Education, both from Kansas State University. Currently, he is serving as the pastor to the United Methodist Outreach Ministries, also known as UMOM, New Day Centers Homeless Shelters. Please help me welcome Reverend Dr. Kelly. Hold on one sec. Let me untangle this for you. Dr. Sakti, just move your hand. It's okay. There, just move your hand. There we go. There we go. So we don't go flying in the middle of the presentation.
I understand liberalism in its classical definition to invite and represent a wider tolerance. I come out of a liberal faith tradition. We United Methodists would tend to err on the side of inclusion. We're accused of believing anything. We dare not be indifferent to the diversity and the choices before us, but we do tend to invite a wider tolerance. Friday, I will officiate at my 600th wedding, and I've required, as our faith tradition requires, pre-marriage conferences before we can officiate. And so on average over the years, 4 pre-marriage conferences, 4 times 600. That's a lot of time spent with couples. In our faith tradition, we use the language, and I heard it named here already, that marriage is instituted of God, ordained of God. That's fancy language. I paraphrase that to mean that marriage was God's idea in the first place, given to us to contribute to our personal and our corporate wholeness. And one could argue that as our marriages go, so go our families, our communities, our schools, our neighborhoods, our nation. In fact, I would dare to suggest, might offend, but I would dare to suggest that one could view marriage as a public health issue. Why do I say that? Because the studies show that children from 2-parent intact families where the marriages are satisfying and stable tend, please hear the word tend, The children tend to do better on measures of self-concept and self-esteem. They tend to do better in measures of school performance. And they are more likely to avoid destructive behaviors. You might want to review so that the most precious gift couples, parents can give their children is a happy, satisfying, stable marriage. Now, don't misunderstand. There are children who come from single-parent families who do very well. I'm talking about tendencies based on the research. Okay? You might want to review some of the research statistics on interfaith marriages. Just Google it, interfaith marriage statistics. It's interesting to note that the number of interfaith marriages has doubled since 1960, from 20% of marriages in a given year to nearly 45%. Jews are most likely to marry a person of another faith. Although Rabbi Bill Burke, who at the time was Rabbi of Temple High, a Reformed congregation, named in a public setting where I was present, that they had decided they would no longer officiate at interfaith weddings, marriages for the same issues, Rabbi, that you identified. But based on the research, Jews have tended to be most likely, and the Mormons least likely for a Mormon to marry a person of another faith. Muslims and Protestant Christians were somewhere in the middle. Catholics depends often on the rabbi, or not the rabbi, the priest, because it will vary from parish to parish, but in terms of their orthodox position, persons are expected to convert to the Catholic faith before they can marry a Catholic. But again, there are major issues of authority there. It's important to note that persons who are in an interfaith marriage tend to describe their marriages as less satisfying than persons who have married someone of the same faith. But they are more satisfying, they tend to be more satisfying, interfaith marriages, than marriages between a person who is devout in his or her faith and a spouse who has no faith. Children who are of interfaith marriages are more likely, twice as likely, to be raised in the faith of the mother, because moms are more likely to take their children to church or to synagogue or to mosque. Evangelical Christians who have married non-religious persons, the divorce rate's about 61-62%. On average, it's approximately 50% divorce rate. That has diminished here in America in recent years because of the economics of it. Folk have decided they just can't afford to get divorced, and so that has impacted the divorce rate in the last 5 to 7 years. But it's still around 50%. Second marriages, the divorce rate is 60%. And third marriages, the divorce rate is 80%. And so the argument is that we learn from our mistakes and tend to get better. Doesn't bear out in terms of the research. Søren Kierkegaard, a Danish theologian of another generation, said that true intimacy is found in a non-possessive love that delights in the particularities of the other. True intimacy is found in a non-possessive love that delights in the particularities of the other. There are, I would think, lots of particularities brought when it comes to faith, and especially interfaith marriages. As a young pastor, I used to spend a lot of time in the pre-marriage conferences focusing on compatibilities, and then decided I just didn't think that's really where we needed to go based on a lot of the research that had come out over my years of ministry. I was a young pastor back in the covered wagon days. What I tended to do in my last 10 to 15 years was to help couples learn to identify and to respect their differences. There's a research now that supports what we've known over the years, that there is often a chemistry that attracts. We're now able to actually watch the brain process information. And we know now that the brain is structured in such a way as to recognize compatible DNA in the prospective mate. Okay? By compatible DNA, the DNA from the parents given the offspring would have a widened immunity. Opposites do attract. There's a chemistry to it, and there's also a science behind it. And so I think helping us to appreciate our differences, cope with our differences, because we are each one uniquely made, modeling that then for our children becomes a particularly crucial issue in our day. I've said, I think in another setting, I think the most important issue facing our country, our culture, is going to be whether or not we're going to be able to live into our growing diversity of race and creed and religion. Now, as a white man, we've not had a good track record when we were the majority, for mercy's sakes. What's going to happen when we become a minority? And so how we teach our children in terms of learning to appreciate and to respect our differences becomes really crucial. Helping our children, modeling that for our children, I think is going to be an important issue. Just two other quick points, and then I'll pass my time. The studies also show that persons in interfaith marriages tend to be more conscious and aware of their own respective faith traditions, and that tends to be a strength. Sometimes we don't even think of what we believe. We've just been nurtured into it, and we're not really even conscious about it. The other piece is, in terms of pre-marriage conferences, I would strongly urge the couple to make the decision which faith the children would be baptized in before they got married. Because the studies suggest if you put that off and if you don't deal with it, then it becomes a source of even greater conflict later.